It made me think that she's continuing to run a very disciplined campaign, and that speech was meant to be both a visual and a verbal contrast to Donald Trump. And it actually, just as an American, gave me hope to see a more normal politician using the backdrop of the White House to deliver messages that were about unity and also about the substance of what it is that she's going to do. She did remind people of what he called for. He asked people to fight like hell when he last stood on that stage in front of that White House and to attack the Capitol. He was going to go with them, but then he decided not to. And so I think in part she was doing a little bit of a persuadable with a contrast message, but she was also giving those people who are a little Trump shy because of how they feel he behaved on January 6th, a reminder of why they shouldn't vote for him and continue to be a part of this broader coalition that she's trying to build.
She's getting high remarks on a well-written speech, if not also a well-delivered one, but there were questions about the very venue that we're describing here. Powerful optics last night, but in a tied presidential campaign in 7 swing states, a lot of politicos said, why Washington? That's the last place you'd want to be seen. How about you?
I think one of the things that she has been criticized for, people, when you talk to focus groups, they wonder whether or not she can be presidential. The way that stage was set up with the flags in the White House, that was to provide the image of what it would look like for her to be presidential. And, as you said, people have given really high marks to the way she delivered that speech and what it was she said. It was her showing the American people that she is able to be presidential.
Well, as she was trying to show what she would be like as president, the person who is currently president almost simultaneously perhaps caused a bit of an issue for her campaign. Joe Biden, in a virtual call with Voto Latino, whether he intended to or not, referred to Trump supporters as garbage. How much of the progress Harris made on that stage last night, if any, was undone by that gaffe?
I think that gaffe is the reason why so many Democrats were relieved when he chose to step aside, because it's gaffes like that that really create headlines and draw the attention away from some of the things that the Trump campaign is doing. I mean, they had a very insulting comedian come up, and they, unlike Harris, have not stepped away from their comments. She has said very clearly that she does not disparage anybody who has different political opinions than hers, and that she plans to represent everybody, whether they worked with her or elected her or not. And you haven't seen that kind of distance created between Trump and what the comedian said about Puerto Ricans and about other minority groups.
Did you like the way Kamala Harris handled that this morning? Should she have been more forceful in distancing herself from Joe Biden or condemning the remark?
I think she was very clear where she was condemning the remark. I think on a number of issues where she has been attacked, she has been very clear in using language that shuts out any doubt of where she stands. I'll give a good example. When she was speaking to Telemundo in the Latino community, she called herself a pragmatic capitalist. And the only way to blunt the socialist attacks against her that resonate with that community is to identify herself as a pragmatic capitalist. And so I think taking those messages head on as she has is the right thing to do.
Well, and she has 6 days still to make those messages resonate, but then election day will be upon us. Obviously, voting is well underway in a lot of places across the country. But what are you hearing, especially with those you worked with, looking into the events of January 6th and the efforts to overturn the results of the last election, about what is taking place, even down to the local level at polling places? What are you bracing for on Election Day and in the aftermath?
I think there's a lot of concern, obviously, because a third of the country still doesn't believe that the 2020 election was a free and fair outcome. And so we're up against a lot of headwinds, but I think there's been a lot of progress that has been made. The Congress passed election reform laws that would raise the threshold, or did raise the threshold on the number of members that would need to contest and vote not to certify to 20%. So that's a little bit better than where we were standing in 2020. So, and then I think at the local level, people have been making efforts to ensure that the process is transparent and that they can deliver a free and fair election as our democracy deserves.
You made reference, Congresswoman, to the remarks that we heard at Madison Square Garden on Sunday night, the lack of an apology that we've, I guess, not heard from the Trump campaign in this case. What does this mean in terms of an impact on Latino voters who were offended by this Puerto Rico garbage island line in a state like yours in Florida?
So in Florida, I'm a little concerned that the margins might be so significant from a lot of the other groups that you may not see a difference. But in Pennsylvania, certainly with 400,000 Puerto Ricans, you're going to see some difference. I represented one of the communities that had the highest number of Puerto Rican in my district when I was in Congress, and they're deeply proud people, deeply offended by what was said, and it reinforces this sense that the island is an afterthought for the Trump administration, especially in the way that they handled Maria.
Well, we saw Rick Scott didn't waste any time responding. So
yeah,
you do
that's the politician in him,
yeah.
understanding that he has a statewide reelect, and he can't afford to let any group go.
Some Democrats we've spoken with have suggested that reelect he could actually lose. Do you believe that when you look at some of those same demographics you were just alluding to in Florida?
Well, I certainly hope that that's the case, but I also understand that elections are more than just about selling hope. They're about having field operations and a strong ground game and infrastructure within the state. And while I hope that happens, I'm concerned a little bit about the state broadly.
Did you have a word for the vice president after that speech last night? I know she invited you to be there.
No, I didn't speak with her.
What would you have told her when she was done?
Well, that I am looking forward to a new generation of leadership in this country, and that it's time that we do move past all of this, and that I certainly appreciate her drawing contrast between someone who has an enemies list, since I think I might be on that one, and somebody who has a to-do list focused on serving the American people.